Welcome to Modern Figures Podcast! Today we have Dr. Kyla McMullen.
Hey.
On the wrong side of the table.
What?
Because we decided that it would be important for you to hear her story. And so I'm going to do my best to interview her, and hopefully she's a good interviewee.
I have not seen these questions, FYI. So, this will be interesting.
These questions were crowdsourced because I believe in the art of delegation. So I did ask several people the most pertinent questions that they felt that they needed answered by Dr. McMullen. Some of them who know her well, some who don't.
Okay.
And so let's get into this. So, as many of you who listen to this podcast may know, Dr. Kyla McMullen earned her Bachelor's of Science degree in Computer Science from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
UMBC.
Where she was also a Meyerhoff Scholar. We'll get into that later. She earned her Master's and PhD degrees in Computer Science and Engineering from the University of Michigan. And some of you might also be aware of the fact that she is the first female of color to graduate from that PhD program, which is hot fire.
I know, but we need more.
We do need more. I agree. And while she was out there, getting this whole degree, she decided, I'm gonna teach too, which is absolutely ridiculous. And now she's here at the University of Florida as a tenure-track faculty member in our Computer and Information Science and Engineering department. And she's super passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and started a whole blog about being beautiful, black, and brainy, and also brilliant is the new black.
Heyo.
Showcasing hundreds of exceptional African Americans who excel in the STEM fields that don't fit the typical, or stereotypical, I should say, scientist role. And so let's jump into this. I don't want to read much more of her bio. I'll let her talk about it in detail more. But we always start out with, what was it like for you growing up?
Oh, growing up. Let's see. I was born on a Thursday.
Really?
I was.
I'm a Monday, baby.
Aw.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it was a lonely Thursday until I entered the world, and then the sun finally shone.
This is what I'm talking about. Can you not?
No, growing up was cool. I grew up in Northeast Washington, D.C., which was very interesting. I went to a private school for the majority of my growing up, and people think, oh yeah, private school, you're gonna, you have so many resources and everything, and that's not how it worked at all. We had teachers, we had things, but our textbooks were super old. It was an interesting thing, but it was better than the neighborhood school. So it was a Catholic school that was near us, and I remember that was sort of my first exposure to computers, because we had 6 for the whole school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and each grade would take turns, so it's about 200 kids in the school, so 20-ish people, 30-ish per class. So this was a K through 8 school, but only the kids who needed enrichment got to use the computer. So that's where I messed up by being smart, and they're like, you don't need to use this computer. I'm like, I need to know the things. But no, it was cool. Me, my mom, my dad, for the most part. Just growing up, hanging out.
So were your parents in computing at all, or?
Not at all. So my mom, she worked for a judge downtown. She was a judge's assistant, administrative assistant at Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And my dad was an upholstery deliverer. And they basically did that the entire time that, I was young. But I do realize, like, my mom is very methodical when it comes to, like, math, and, like, she took care of, like, all the bills, all the everything. Like, she's a very process-oriented person, so she's the one who, like, made sure stuff ran the way it needed to, and, like, she sews, too, and, like, she's very artistic in terms of, like, cake decorating and stuff like that, but she's also very logical, so, like, literally just watching her as I grew up, like, I got to see how she does things in steps and processes, and, like, looking back, I was able to be like, oh, that's where I got that from. She's not programming, but I do see how to do things, very carefully in logical steps. And, if you try to do something outside of the step, no, that's not how it goes. Nope.
So did you like school?
No, not at all. Like, I could not stand school, and I got good grades, but I was like, can't we just cover this in an email? Like, can we just give us the book and we'll return the assignments? Why do I need to come here and sit in this uniform at a desk to prove to you that I understand this thing? So I was never a fan of school. I like the people at school, but recess, all star at recess.
Extrovert.
Right. But no, I was never a fan of school, like, ever. And I think also because there were a lot of subjects that I just didn't care for. And since we didn't really focus a lot on, like, science and math, I didn't have, like, my turn to do what I wanted to do. I liked algebra once we finally got there because it felt like a puzzle. But for the most part, I was like, just miss me with this school stuff.
So you liked math and science,
yeah,
but all the other stuff you were just like, eh.
You can keep it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what about, like, outside of school?
Oh, yeah. Outside of school, let's see. Growing up, for the most part, like, the biggest thing I did was, like, stuff with my church. So my church still has a whole, like, dance and drama ministry. So, like, going there and doing, like, dance. And we had these huge theatrical productions every Christmas where, we would have literal, like, llamas and horses and
like
camels.
Real live ones?
Yes, live ones that would be in the church going across the stage. And they were huge productions. Like, Marvin Sapp used to come and sing, Vicky Winans. Like, we had a lot of, like, some stars that came through. And so practice for that. I'll be listening to Christmas music in August because you got to do the auditions and all that. So very active in, like, theater and dance growing up. Softball, I played softball from, like, probably 5th grade on through, like, college. Not, like, on a team in college, but what is it, rec sports type stuff. I like softball. I tried basketball because I'm tall, and
I was just about to ask you that. Yeah.
It turns out being tall is not the only requirement to play basketball well.
I think we're like, what, 2 inches apart, maybe?
Something like that.
You started dancing. You actually enjoyed dancing and performing.
Oh, yeah.
You still dance?
Still dance. Yeah, we even have a performance coming up on Sunday. So for me, dance is, like, just a way to keep sane. And I think, like, with this day, how we're so, like, connected with computers and we're constantly on checking our phones, checking this, checking that, you can't dance and check your email. So I think that's, like, one activity that requires me to turn off for a certain amount of time. And, like, even when I'm, like, super stressed out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even have time to be going to this dance class. What am I doing? I just put my stuff down, and, like, at the end of the class, I feel 100 times better. And even if I have to, like, go back to whatever it is I'm doing, it's like I go back with a better attitude about what I'm doing. So I probably would have, like, grown through it if I had just skipped the dance class and done it versus coming back and being like, oh, it's not so bad. At least I got to dance today.
So let's, like, go back. So school, you were, like, cool with math and science, not so much in, like, the other stuff.
Not English and social studies and what else?
But, like, how did you get into computer science then?
It always was, like, this thing that I felt like I was being kept from. I felt like it was a secret everybody else knew how to use except for me.
What?
So I mentioned how, like, our school had this program, maybe we had, like, some grant or something where kids could take home computers. So guess what? All the kids who needed enrichment could take home computers. And I'm like, I need this thing. And, like, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So, like, my parents couldn't afford a computer. So that started it. But every, like, thing I asked for Christmas was always computer computerized, like the little pocket My Dear Diary thing, the Gigapets, what else? 2XL, anything that was like a robot technology oriented. If you gave me a calculator, I would play with that. I had a light up watch, like a digital watch. Like I just wanted things that were digital because I was just fascinated with the fact that you could press a button in one place and then something else would happen somewhere else. Like that was just fascinating to me. I had to figure out where that happened. So moving on to high school. My mom made me go to this science and tech high school because, again, I hated school. I didn't care where I was going. So she made me go to this. I took the test for a science and tech high school, and they had different tracks, and computing was one of the tracks. And I was like, this is the only way I'm going to figure out this thing. So if I have a whole class about it, I am going to figure this thing out. So, yeah, that's how I got into it. We took computer math, which is more like logic and gates and like the instructions of computers, and then the class after that was AP Computer Science, and that's when I actually like learned how to program.
Wow, so there was AP Computer Science way back then?
Yeah, girl.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I don't think I went to a science and technology high school as well. I don't think we had AP Computer Science. I don't even know if we had computer science at all. But
yeah, it's usually largely dependent on like the expertise of the teachers. Like if teachers are scared to teach it or offer it, or they don't go through the actual training for it, then yeah, you won't have it at the school, which is, you know, kind of bad because, you know, math hasn't changed for years, English hasn't changed, history hasn't changed, so you have like lots of those AP courses, but computer science is relatively new, and when you oftentimes have older teachers, they're comfortable in offering what they know, and sometimes they're afraid to not know things, so they're less likely to offer that. But we were lucky because I actually had a black man who was my computer science teacher, and he was fresh out of his master's program, had a minor in computer science, and I was like, yes, this is great.
So a black man taught you computer science.
Right, and it was such a juxtaposition because I was like, wait, I need to turn into a white boy because that's all the folks I ever saw taking the computer science classes. And I was like, whoa, there's a black guy that's in charge of this thing. I think I can do this.
So I feel like we've covered the Kyla white boy
right, we've talked about that
mindset, so I'm not going to go into that.
We don't have to.
But I really would like to know, like, who were you in high school? Because it sounds like you were an interesting human.
I didn't stand out, actually. Everybody at the high school I went to was like a continuation of another middle school, but I had moved from DC and knew no one. So I literally knew no one. There was one girl from my church who was in the same grade as me, but like she wasn't in science and tech, and all my classes were science and tech, so I maybe saw her if I was walking to gym, you know. But I was pretty quiet, I would say.
Were you a nerd? Because I feel like you were a nerd.
Not exactly. I'd had to be like a little more diligent to be a nerd. Like I never completely failed. Like I got A's, but I didn't like strive to get the highest A. I'm like, I'm gonna get the sufficient A to do this. A. Yeah, because like I had a teacher, APS history, and he had this thing called the Promised Land. And if you got an A on one of his exams, he'd write your name on the board as being in the Promised Land. You know.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it was a lot. But he had like a photographic memory. Like he was like. He could do history without the book. Like and his trick on the first day of school, he would call the roll, everyone say here, 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 and then he'd go back and say who everyone was, like from where you were sitting for every class.
That is so creepy.
Yeah, he had like a really ridiculous memory, but yeah, so I would never strive to get in the Promised Land, but I got an A in the course, so.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, you know, like, there's stereotypes about people who are in computing.
Oh, yeah.
And I personally don't feel like you fit in that box.
Not at all.
If we were to describe that box and what it looks like. But I can't imagine high school Kyla.
I'm trying to think, because, you know, you evolve through things. So I got there, and the only thing I knew about high school was Saved by the Bell. So I was like, all right, I need to make friends with the people so we can go to the Max and hang out after school. Like, I was like, that's the only picture of high school that I had as young Kyla. So I don't know, I was quiet. I talked on the phone a lot. My best friend went to a different school, so we would hang out a lot. But, I was kind of cool with lots of different people. I wasn't in like one specific clique or group. Like, I wasn't like, oh yeah, for lunch I sit with these people and da 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 da. Like, I sat with whoever I knew. If we had a cool conversation that day, I'll come in, we'll talk at whatever class. Yeah.
So was college always on your radar as like the next step after high school?
Yes, because my parents said, you need to go to college. And I'm like, well, you pay the bills around here, so looks like I'm going to college. So yeah, it was always something that my parents talked about. And I knew that if I had to go to college, it's going to cost a lot of money. So I needed to get good grades. So that's why I'm like, I'll get the A, but I'm not going to break my back to get it. I'm not going to get a super A. Also, because I had all these other after school activities and stuff. Like, that's taken away from my dancing time. So yeah, it was always on the radar.
Okay. And did you apply to like lots of colleges, or did you just decide, I'm going to stay kind of close by?
So that's funny. So I did not want to go to UMBC. Like, that was the last college on my list of colleges.
I mean, not that far, but yeah.
Yeah, I applied to a bunch of places in like North Carolina. I was just really in love with North Carolina, probably because we have family there, and I really liked it a lot. We still do love North Carolina. But I applied to a bunch of schools there, and I got into them all, but the scholarships weren't popping. So then guidance counselor encouraged me to apply for UMBC. My mom made me apply to UMBC. And so I filled that out and applied for Meyerhoff, and they're like, oh, it's a full ride. And I'm like, I guess, in hindsight, I'm glad they did not let me just go to North Carolina and rack up all this expensive out-of-state debt, doing this when there was an awesome school down the street.
So what's Meyerhoff? For people who don't know, who are listening.
Meyerhoff is a scholarship program that's at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. It was started by Robert and Jane Meyerhoff, as well as Dr. Freeman Rabowski, who is the president of UMBC. And it is a cohort-based program where you bring in students who are really smart, but may not be in the best schools or not. And it's a mixture, actually. We're pretty diverse. We have students from all over, but they make a very special effort to include students from high schools that, are traditionally underserved. So you start with, your cohort. You come in for a summer bridge program. You take a couple college classes, but you get, really acquainted with college, but it also teaches you the value of community and being your brother's keeper. And one example of that is in our summer program, our math class, the rule was whoever got the lowest grade on whatever assignment or test, that was everyone's grade. So,
what?
Yeah, it was everybody's grade. So then that teaches you to be like, all right, do you know derivatives? Do you know derivatives? Can you please? So you would go around making sure everybody understood everything. And the bigger impact of that is, we all bring each other up. We're not competing for a limited number of degrees. All of us are here to get our degrees. So, yeah, but it's definitely very family-based, just lots of very community-minded. You take classes together. We all lived in the same dorm the first semester. We have study groups together, just leaning on each other. And, to this day, we're still, friends with each other and, godparents and best friends and going to each other's weddings and stuff. Like, that bond hasn't stopped just because we're all over the country.
That's super cool. That is super cool. So you go to college, you have to do all this extra work, seemingly, right? Because you're doing more than what most undergrads their freshman year have to do, right?
Oh, yeah. And you couldn't pledge either.
What?
That's another thing. Yeah. Well, you could at your own
you could,
discretion.
Sneak and do it?
Well, no, they know, because people would tell on you, too. We have people who would go to staff and be like, well, such and such, da, da, da. But, no, if you pledged and your grade slipped under whatever the minimum is, your funding could be eligible to be taken. So there's that.
Okay.
But yeah, we did have a lot more than most that was required of us.
And you applied to computer science?
Yep.
To a computer science program?
Yep, computer science, because that was, high school. I was like, all right, this is the class I hate the least. Because, again, still hated school, so.
So did you hate school when you got to college?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, I dropped out every day. Like every single day. I was like, I'm dropping. No, I'm sorry. Every week I would be like, I'm going to drop out. After this homework assignment, I'm dropping out. And I would just like say that to get me past whatever the thing was I'm doing. Like, I'm going to finish this problem set, but I'm done with school after this.
Dear students who are listening, Kyla got 3 college degrees, okay? So
Right.
don't listen to her.
But in my mind, that's what had to get me, from day to day. The fact that I'm like, all right, I don't have to do anything else after this. And then I still forget and go to class and get another assignment. Like, oh wait, no. After this one, I'm done.
Oh my goodness.
But no, it was cool. It was hard though. My first exam, I got a grade close to my age, and I was like, all right, this might not be for me. Like, we got a study guide. And I remember we were tested on everything that was not on the study guide. So yeah, that was a very humbling experience.
And it sounds like you learned and adapted and survived, apparently. Yeah. Did you do like the whole, I'm gonna like not get a whole A, but I'm gonna get a little close to an A?
Oh, no, that changed. Oh. There was more on the line. So that was public school. I was doing that mess in. That's free. College, I knew that one of the tenets of Meyerhoff is to whom much is given, much is required. So for that, I knew that this opportunity, I didn't take it lightly. It had been given to me. I earned it, but I had been afforded it, and not a lot of other people had. So I took it very seriously. I knew that if I didn't, my parents didn't have money to send me to college. Like, I would be throwing away so much if I didn't give it my all. So I kind of got my act together, for college to make sure I stayed in there and graduated.
Did you find like the classes hard, or were you just like, I'm good?
Yeah, the classes were hard, like, because computer science is like, it's a mental thing. Like, it's almost like the computer is hazing you, because you can understand all the concepts in class, and then you type it out, and it's like, nope, that's wrong. You're like, I literally wrote what's on the slide.
Right.
So, like, there's a lot of, like, mental stuff you have to get over. Like, you love the major when your code is running and compiling correctly. And then when you can't figure out where this missing semicolon is missing from, and, it's just driving you crazy, and you're looking at the thing that it's saying is missing, it's like, all right, you know what? I don't need this. So, it has its ups and downs. But, yeah, the programming part was difficult a lot. The concepts weren't hard, but, like, the coding definitely was.
So do you like coding?
Oh, I love coding.
Oh.
Because you figure it out. You practice it and you figure it out.
I just assumed, like, at this point, you might be like, I'm not, like, 100% in love with coding.
Oh, anymore. No, it's the opposite. Anytime I get a chance to code, I do. Like, whenever students are like, I have a problem with my code, I'm like, ooh, let's look at it. All right, let's download it. What's it say? Let's do that. What's this library do? Or, like, you know. Yeah, I even coded something. One of the students on our committee, and they had a question about something. I'm like, we can just code this up in MATLAB. I'll be back.
I will say, okay, yeah, that makes sense now that I'm thinking about it, because I was, like, towards the end of my dissertation, and I was freaking out about how to like analyze a whole lot of data.
You had like 80,000 rows of Excel data.
I did. And who did I go to, ladies and gentlemen? Dr. Kai. That's right.
And we had fun. We got some coffee at the Starbucks and sat in the little room with MATLAB.
And it worked great.
Yay.
And then my advisor, because I'm, again, not a computer scientist, was like, I don't know what this is and I can't use it.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges with coding. If other people don't know how to code, they don't know what you're doing, so they're a little skeptical of the result.
So then I had to recreate the whole thing in Excel, which
makes no sense.
Whoo chow. But we did it.
Yeah.
We did it. And the answers, they confirmed with each other. So
exactly.
Basically,
I did the verification. That's
right.
all.
Basically, Kyla knows what she's doing. We can trust her code.
That's
cool.
Right.
I guess my next question, so like Meyerhoff, did the programming stop when you finished your first year, or does it keep going?
Oh, no, it's 4 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, you have like cohort meetings like every year, or maybe every semester, maybe even every month. Who knows?
That's like super comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I really like the model because like in the cohort meeting, they'd be like, who's applied for an internship? And then you'd have to name what you applied for, and like staff would get on you if you basically weren't making whatever milestones it was you're supposed to make, or who hasn't signed up for the GRE class, or who hasn't signed up for the MCAT study group, and all this stuff.
So you were basically encouraged to do those things, to do internships, to do research.
Yeah, we started writing our personal statements the summer before our freshman year. And they made it like basically this document you just keep adding to as you get experience. And it was good because, you know, you're going to try to get an internship. Oh, I've already written this personal statement. Let me just add a paragraph about school. And, you know, it just kind of evolved over time.
So when did you decide I want to do research?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I don't think I ever actually decided I wanted to do research.
Okay.
But I will say I did have some major motivations for it. So, I worked at an internship at IBM, and whatever problem it was, they had me solving. I didn't think we were solving it in the smartest way possible. And my boss was like, hey, and he didn't have a PhD. And he was like, well, you know what? Dr. So-and-so down the hallway is the one who said that we're going to do it this way. So, you know, go talk to Dr. So-and-so about how you feel about, you know, the solution. I didn't know it was a setup. Where
it was definitely a setup.
It was a setup. So Dr. So-and-so was like, you know, I respect what you're saying, da-da-da-da. And then basically he was like, listen, if you want to be the person who decides things in research, you need to have a PhD. So I'm like, well, good, because I don't like this. Like, if I have to solve problems in the dumbest way possible, I do not want to, you know, I don't want to feel like I don't have a voice. I want to be the person who's credible in the room to do it. And then I was able to, you know, get some research experience there. I really liked what I was doing because my project was open-ended, and I solved it the way they wanted me to. But I was like, but if I was just here a little bit longer, we could just write a script that does this and just get rid of this whole other part. You know, I just felt like there was so much more to explore. So, yeah, that was basically my start with research. Another, I had individual study with a professor in my last year, and that was also another thing where I got to help him work on some of his research, and I felt like, okay, this research thing is cool, it's just finding out an answer, all right.
Yeah. Did Meyerhoff influence that at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So they always encourage you. For the tech people, though, they encouraged either a tech internship or research. But, like, we have people from all science, STEM majors. So for the biology folks, always research. But the tech folks, we kind of got a choice.
And you chose research.
Yeah, I chose research my third year. After my second year. So going into my third year. And I was like, all right, now I see why this PhD thing. Because they groom you from the beginning. Like, you come in as a high school student, and in that first meeting, they're like, you're going to get a PhD. And I'm like, what? No, not even at selection weekend. They're like, I'm going to get...
Selection weekend?
Yeah, so it's a whole weekend where they have all the kids across, you know, it's about 200 people, like maybe 100 each weekend. And you're interviewing for the scholarship program.
Wow.
And because it's not for everybody,
you
know. And you come in and you talk about who you are, and at the end you state what degree you want to get. And I'm like, you know, you stand up, I'm Kyla McMullen, I'm going to get a PhD in computer science. But I actually said, I'm Kyla McMullen, I'm going to get an MD PhD in making web pages, because that was the extent of my... And we still laugh about it. One of my friends still laughs at me to this day for saying that. But, you know, I got basically there, you know.
So how did you choose grad school, like your program?
Yeah. So going on visits definitely helped. So, like, I won't name the schools, but there are schools that have visits that allow you to, you know, come and see the school and all that, talk to the students, and figuring out, is this the right place for me? Not only the city and the researchers, but are the students happy? So I didn't even...
That's real.
Yeah. And Michigan wasn't even on my radar. I was like so against going on that Michigan trip. Someone said, hey, University of Michigan has this trip and we need some more people to, you know, to sign up to go. And I was like, no, where is Michigan? Are they even on Eastern time? It is cold up there. Isn't that Canada? Like, I was just going, like, I went on this rant in the office, and then I remember Mr. Harmon was like, Kyla, if you don't like it, it's a visit. You don't have to go. He's like, you like to travel, don't you? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. All right, I'll check it out. I'll check out this place. And when I got there, what I saw from the graduate students, the engineering graduate students specifically, mirrored a lot of what I saw in Meyerhoff. Like, they had this weekend called Impact, and all the students basically kind of like hosted us, and we had like a mentor. But I remember just watching them interact with each other and like, hey, did you pick an advisor for the summer yet? Hey, how's blah 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 going? I really felt like they had each other's backs, and they were really interested in each other and not just classmates. Like they interacted outside of it and were interested in each other's well-being. So I'm like, all right, this is a community I could get with, and I didn't feel that at other schools.
Okay, so you go to Michigan.
Yep.
It's colder.
It's
It's
way colder.
It's whiter,
Very
for lack
much.
of a better word. You know, we've talked about a lot on the podcast about isolation in graduate school. And did you feel that at all while you were up there?
At times I did, but not, I would say maybe in the department sometimes. I felt isolation because, again, I'm the only one in my classes, or one of 2 or 3 in my classes, so that was definitely isolating. But when I leave the class and, you know, I can go to an event and be around other PhD students of color and be like, let me tell you all what happened in class today, you know, so I had, you know, a community there. So sometimes class was an isolating experience, and like there would be things that would happen. Like a professor, we were talking about artificial intelligence one day, and he starts going on this question of, oh, if, you know, robots got to the same intelligence as humans, you know, what would their rights be? Would robots have to sit in the back of the bus? And, and I'm just like, and I had no one to rant. Like, I was outraged, and I was looking around like, is anybody else hearing and seeing this? And the whole class just looking at him like, he said 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah.
4 + 4 is 8.
That was a logical conclusion.
Yeah. So when stuff like that happens, I had, you know, my folks that I knew I could go to be like, let me tell y'all what happened today. So it's isolated, but I did have somewhere to de-isolate myself.
And so you danced in college, like as an undergrad. Did you keep dancing at Michigan?
Yeah, I took dance classes like through the dance department because we had to take PE requirements. So
what?
That was my
Wait,
was one of my,
in graduate school?
No, college.
I'm so confused.
So that was one of my PE ones. But yeah, I joined a group maybe after my first year. I had a project with a girl, and we were at a group project, and she's like, oh yeah, I can't work past 7 o'clock because I gotta go do this thing. I was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm gonna go dance. And she's like, I was like, can I come to dance? And she's like, sure. So she introduced me to the dance studio, and I loved it. I never left.
Where was the dance studio?
It was in Ann Arbor. It was on campus actually, called Dance Theater Studio. Hey y'all, they're still there. I love them to death. There's, you know, a family who owns it, and there's a performance group that I was one of the starting members of, and you know, we did flash mobs when that was a thing. We had a lot of fun.
Y'all were partying.
Yes, we were, but it was just, and nobody was, maybe a few students. It was a good mixture of people who had various affiliations with the school and outside of the school.
So a lot of people, when they think about graduate school, they think you're in the lab all day, like you don't have time to be out dancing around, like, you know, like for these frivolous things.
Right.
Like, how did you find time to do that?
You make time to do it. So I put it in my schedule. It's a non-negotiable thing. Like, everybody knew Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 to 8:45. Kyla was not going to whatever function it is, or she might be late or leaving early, because that was the time. You have to decide that that's important to you.
Yeah. What other, like, activities did you do while in grad school?
Oh, man. So I'm not a runner, but I led a running club.
Wait, what?
And I was the slowest one.
You led the club?
Yes. Well, I organized it, I'll say, because I did not lead it because I was not the fastest in running. But I would be the one who, like, determined where we would run and what time, and send emails to folks like, all right, we're at Gallup Park, 6 a.m. This is where we're our trajectory, you know. So even if somebody joined late, they knew around where we were going to be. And then some of us got the bright idea to train for a half marathon. So we would travel and do like different races. And
half marathon.
Yeah, we did the Cleveland Rock and Roll half marathon, and like you have to train and do like 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles, you know, all the way up on like your long run.
From couch to...
Yeah, well, no, just like, so past the 3 miles for the 5K, you would do like, basically your long run each week, you would bump up however long you ran the last week by 1 mile. So I had to map out like what paths we could take in town to get to like, okay, here's the 7 mile path, here's the 8 mile path, so we could start and end in the same place. And we never went home unless the last person, always me, was back. So Yeah, we did a lot of running. It was fun because I always wanted to run away from school. So I was like, at least, I'm running in a circle.
Still in graduate school?
It was hard because it was a lot going on. But yeah, I had a running club. I was very active in our group that was like basically like Grad Nesby. It was called SMESG. I was like the vice president and president, and we did lots of like activities and programming for that. We had a group called Muses, which was the movement of underrepresented sisters in engineering and science.
Yeah, okay.
I was the VP. I don't know all the positions.
I like that name.
Yeah, girl.
Okay, so obviously you were super involved.
Oh yeah.
Did your advisor have anything to say about that? Were they aware?
He had all the words about it.
Ooh, okay.
But so when it came time to qualify, so once I passed the quals exam and my proposal, he told me that the committee had expressed concern that I was the president of too many things and doing too many things outside. Mind you, I never told anybody in the department anything I was doing.
Isn't that ridiculous?
So I'm like, there's a rat somewhere out here, and why do they feel like I need to be a robot to do this program? And he's like, you should is there a way that someone else can be the president? I'm like, it's January. No, this is the mid, what, does that even make sense? So they felt like I wasn't focusing enough. And I'm like, no, these people are the ones who actually keep me here. So I'm good. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll delegate. And there's a person I just told him a big old lie that I was going to stop doing as much and actually double down and did more.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I'm contrary.
Yes, we've noticed. So what was your research area? Is it the same as what you're doing now as a faculty member?
Yes, it actually is the same area. So my research area is in 3D or spatial audio. So this is a technique where you can alter the sounds that you get in your ears to make a sound appear like it's coming from an actual space around you. The way that sound naturally travels to your ears, we can mimic that with digital signal processing and make it sound like something's coming from places around you. It's kind of hard to describe. You kind of have to just hear it, but it's been integrated in things like virtual reality, augmented reality, and it's just a way to cue people if they're in environments where they either can't see something that they need to see, or your vision is occluded, or you're blind, or just all kinds of things, or your vision is already occupied by something else and you don't need any more things to look at. So one use case is with pilots. There's 1,000 instruments that they're looking at, and if they can have some of those instruments that are visual moved to the auditory field, and it's less of a burden cognitively on them.
That's interesting. So
it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, so I know that you had some difficulties finishing your PhD, mainly because of your advisor and that relationship.
It was my first advisor. My second advisor was amazing.
Oh, so the first one, were you doing 3D audio with that person?
No, I was doing, so his research area was around making educational technology for kids that are traditionally underserved. So I thought that was cool because I'm like, oh, I can use my degree to impact humanity and do all these wonderful things, but it didn't work out like that. So that's when I learned that it's less about the topic and more about your relationship with the advisor and their ability to advise you, because this person, really cool, awesome person, but did not have the time to actually train me, which is what the PhD is. You're getting research training. They didn't actually have time to do that, so I was kind of just flopping all around.
So you get towards the end and you're like, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to be a professor. Why?
I didn't say that, actually.
Wait, I was going to say, you're a professor, but
I hate school.
You hate school,
exactly,
right? So
exactly.
At some point you decided to be around school.
I know, right?
For forever.
Isn't it crazy?
Despite the entire time being in school saying, I hate school.
Right, because you're on the opposite side of the table at this point. I didn't like being on the receiving end of school.
Okay.
But yeah.
I guess I get that. I guess.
But yeah, when I was coming out, we had AGAP, and AGAP was mostly geared towards people who want to go into the professoriate. I remember going to the events and being like, I'm sorry, I just want to be at the event. I don't want to actually be a professor.
Wow.
And then I ended up being a professor, but it was mostly because I realized I didn't really have a good grasp of what being a professor was. I knew what I saw in class, and I assumed that that was my teacher's daily life, grading our papers and I don't know, grading our papers and showing up late and making lecture slides and teaching to people that are halfway asleep, which is part of the job, but it's not the whole thing. So I didn't know that, like, you know, the freedom that you get with research and basically how your lab is almost your own startup where you get to research things that are interesting to you. You get PhD students who actually help. You get to set the vision for the lab, which was what I was yearning to do when I was at IBM that summer. You know, I got to be the boss finally, you know, and basically create a research program and solve things that I think are interesting, because all you have to do is write a paper or write a grant proposal where if you can convince a panel of people that what you are doing is important, they'll give you the money to do it. You can't do that in industry. Not all the time.
Yeah, no. I mean, unless you're the boss, right?
Yeah, unless you're the boss. But normally there's some bottom line that you're trying to make. Like there's some specific project that you are on and you are developing for that project, and there isn't much room for, you know, I like Gmail, but what if we made something called T-mail? That, you know, there's no way to change stuff, you know, to drastically the way that we have that freedom.
So, AGEP, the Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professoriate.
Yep.
There was a program at Michigan for that. Okay. And so that's what like kind of gave you this vision into the future of what faculty life could be like.
Well, not really. So I went to the AGEP stuff, but I never wanted to be a professor. So when I graduated, I met someone by the name of Juan Gilbert. Well, no, I knew him before I graduated, but because he, again, had what I loved, which was community. So he had a whole group of grad students that were doing amazing things in computing. And when I felt isolated at school, I think back about his lab, like, all right, if all else fails, I'm going to ask Juan if I can join his lab at Auburn. You know, that was my, but I knew that he had community there, so kept in touch. I defended, had a dance show, jumped on a plane, and went to the Chi conference. And they had something called Chi Me, which was like a pre-conference for minority students. And he said, hey, didn't you just defend? Didn't you just graduate? I'm like, yeah. It's like, all right, send me your CV. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I just want to send it to people at Clemson. So I'm at the front of the room. He's in the back of the room. I email it to him. And then 20 minutes later, he's like, oh, the faculty, they loved your CV. When can you come for a visit? I was like, whoa, pump your brakes. I'm not trying to be faculty. Because I knew he was connected with a lot of people, just like industry and like everything. I didn't know what he wanted it for. So I'm thinking, you know, he's going to pass it to a bunch of folks. I said no. He called a lot, and I said no. I ignored his phone calls a lot, and like he was a bugaboo. Like he kept calling.
Look, I know.
And finally, it was kind of like the Michigan thing where I was like, all right, if I'll go for this thing, and if I don't like it, I don't have to stay there. So I said, all right, I'll do this interview. And so, you know, I went down, I met people, and I was like, oh, you did research in this? I see how my research could actually align. Oh, you mean if I'm a professor, I can do this? So I didn't really understand that, you know, research was 60% of your job and that teaching wasn't as much, and also you can rely on TAs. I was used to being the TA, the person who had to do all the things. What else? And then we had a very frank conversation, and he's like, what's keeping you from wanting to be faculty? And I mentioned everything that I had concerns about, like, for example, having to write grants. And I'm like, I don't want to have to write to fund my life. That's stressful. He's like, well, it's not that serious, number one. Number two, I'll train you. Like, I don't expect you to just come in the door and know how to do these things. So he was able to present the professoriate in a way that made it seem appealing.
So now in your role, what do you think is like the most challenging thing that you face being young and black and female and a faculty member?
How much time was that?
Not much.
I'm joking. The most challenging thing, I would say, I don't know, there's a couple things. So there's different facets. So one of the challenges in the lab is personnel stuff. as you wouldn't think, like managing personalities and people who need to work together, and one person might have the answer the other person needs, but they won't talk to them, or there's just like things, just managing people is one thing, and like making sure that people stay motivated to do what they need to do, because I can't make anybody do anything. I can't pull out my belt in the lab and be like, I said do research. But making sure that you're equipping your students with everything that they need to be successful. And like I always try to end every meeting with, all right, does anybody need anything from me? What do you need? All right, let me order this, let me find this, let me do this, just so there's no stumbling block, in terms of their progress and success. So I think the hardest part, though, is the amount of work that you are expected to do, which is like teaching, research, service, you're applying for grants, you're writing papers, you're mentoring your students, you're teaching class, you're grading things, you're having a podcast, you're doing all this stuff, you're running a conference. So, and then you're evaluated on how well you do all of these things. And I think the stuff that they expect you to do, there are not enough hours in the day to do them. So remaining sane and all that. And then also picking what to ignore every day, because there's always 1,000 fires. So picking which fire is just going to have to burn a little bit longer.
Speaking of fires,
so
you just won a career award from the National Science Foundation, which is like super amazing and a phenomenal accomplishment.
Thank you.
And it's like basically for early career investigators. To conduct research in a space that's like kind of transformative, right? Like it's new, it's innovative, it might fail, but we're going to give you some money to do it anyways.
Basically.
And you chose to apply 3D audio into a fire emergency management type of space.
Right.
And that's really cool. Like, when I think about the types of research that I'm seeing coming out of like computer science, I don't necessarily see things that are super practical oftentimes. Like sometimes they're very abstracted and it's hard to understand like how this is going to help me. Yeah. I kind of get the fire thing primarily because my husband's a fireman, right? So I know a lot about like the sounds that relate to fire just because we talk about it all the time. But how do you generate these research ideas? How do you like develop those thoughts?
That's a really good question. So when I first started my research, I thought 3D audio was cool, but I always wanted to move it out of the lab and into practical situations. So I've always been trying to figure out how a person can walk around, you know exactly what position they're standing in as well as what direction they're facing, and be able to deliver some kind of auditory cues relevant to their environment. And that environment part was the thing that could change. Like if you're a person with visual disabilities, then I could tell you waypoints so you could walk around. You know, if you're air traffic control, I can tell you the positions of other targets of interest or where you need to go to next. And then fire, of course, because this is a situation where it's very high stakes. There's lots of things happening at the same time. There's lots of change, and you cannot see. So I felt like if there was something that 3D audio had the potential to transform, this was the use case. So I naturally, adapted to here. And plus, like, the stars aligned. Rod, your husband, was able to, say, hey, I can actually advise on this. I was able to have some good conversations with the Gainesville Fire Rescue, and they were like, this is amazing. What do we need to do to get this thing going? We have these facilities. You can outfit it with whatever you need. And the stars just aligned to get it to happen, because there's been other collaborations that just kind of don't get off the ground sometimes. And, it just wasn't a good fit. But for this one, it was a natural fit. Everybody saw the vision.
So do you keep like a journal or like a living document where you write down all your crazy ideas?
Oh, yeah. I did at one point. Right now, that's probably just like my lab. We have a list that we talk about for like the lab group meeting. And so I always have like, okay, cool idea for somebody else. So if someone joins the lab and they're like, what can I work on? I'm like, well, we were actually talking about, well, wouldn't it be cool if blah, 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 blah could happen? And like a few times we've had people be able to actually take those cool ideas and actually develop it. And one of my students who's starting in the spring took one of the cool ideas and was able to get it working. And I'm like, all right, come work for me full time. Thank you. Get your PhD. Thank you.
That's great. That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the aspiring professors out there, what would you tell them about becoming a assistant professor?
About becoming?
Yeah, like what would you tell them? Like what would you say?
Like in terms of what they need to do?
I don't know. I want to be a professor. What do I need to know?
Oh, I see. So I would say, of course, be technically competent in whatever your field is, but don't devalue how much your writing impacts what you do, because yes, I'm a computer scientist and I type code, but you need to know how to express yourself in a way that people can understand and digest, because that's just how things go and that's how you're evaluated and you get funding. I would definitely invest in like a whole writing class if I were you. Don't neglect the value of soft skills, as people like to call them, which I don't think they're soft, but that's
professional skills.
Right. Don't ignore that. Like, you need to know how to have a budget. You need to know how the university works. You can't just operate in a bubble. Like, you need to just know how stuff works. What else? We talked about that. Budgets with the lab, like that's a whole lot. Let's see, managing people. Like, I would go back and just take like a personnel management class, because I think I'm all right with just people one-on-one. So like all of my students, I know how they need to have someone talk to them, but I'm bad with getting them with each other when they have an issue, how to like solve that. So like personnel management, I would say, is a huge thing too.
Okay, I think that's good stuff. I mean, yeah, I think that's good stuff. I think that people side of things we neglect a lot.
Yeah.
And you're basically like a little mini entrepreneur, right?
Definitely.
Like, you're coming up with these ideas. You're asking people to give you money, like, hey, sponsor this thing.
This is really cool. And give me the money.
And hopefully it works at the end. And then you're managing the people that are going to help create this thing. So it sounds like generating ideas is a collaborative process, and so having these like communication skills is invaluable.
And I'd say even too, identifying your weak points and not running from those, because they will come back to haunt you in many ways, embarrassing ways sometimes, or you might get called on something that you're supposed to know, but you kind of didn't take the time to learn statistics or learn this esoteric thing about your research that a whole paper may hinge on. Hey, you actually didn't do a really good job in this one weakness part. So embrace your weaknesses, and if you have a weakness, either hire someone or consult with someone who that's their strong point and go from there. But don't run from your weaknesses, because they are going to come back and tell on you.
Okay, so this is kind of a random question, which I personally thought was great, and I don't remember who asked it, but you've lived a lot of places. So you grew up in D.C., then you went to Maryland, which is not far.
Well, Baltimore. It's a little far.
Baltimore, that's right. So a little bit further. And then you went to Michigan, so you went to the Midwest.
Yep.
Then you went to South Carolina.
Yep.
Now you're in Florida. And then you did internships, so you were in different states. You traveled.
North Carolina, New York.
Yeah.
Connecticut.
So which of those places is your favorite?
Oh, don't ask me that. Am I supposed to say Florida?
Hey, I didn't ask this question. There's someone else.
I'd say there's a tie between two places. So definitely Florida, because I love the fact that we're really close to lots of major cities, like specifically Gainesville. We can get to the beach, get to Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa. You know, it's amazing. That's cool. But we don't have their traffic, so
amen.
It's awesome. I can you can do a day trip to the beach if you want. You know, and that was unheard of growing up. So, and it's warm here almost year round, you know, amazing weather, all that great stuff. So tied with Durham, North Carolina, like that Raleigh-Durham sort of area, because it's like really cool for young professionals. It's up, it's thriving, it doesn't have crazy traffic. I have family there too. Like, I don't know, I just really like North Carolina. You get all the seasons, I like fall, so you get to see the leaves changing and all that, and it's not super, super cold when it gets cold. But yeah, it'll be between those two.
I was thinking you were going to say Florida because you met your husband here.
Oh yeah, that too. Hey, baby.
which is surprising to me. Because a lot of people, when they talk about moving somewhere like Gainesville, finding a husband is a challenge, right? But,
right.
I mean, you did it, and y'all been together.
I'm just saying.
So it's possible, people.
It is very possible.
People through the other end of this microphone. So how was that? How did you meet? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about it. So, when I got to Gainesville, I was actually in a relationship that ended up being the best thing I never continued. And anyway, online dating. I was never afraid of online dating, so I always met interesting people, and at the very least, I had a story. So anyway, we met. I've kind of approached online dating like it's Amazon. Like you kind of just browse all the stuff out there, and then you click on the one you want to put in your cart. So I had a profile, and I was like, let's just see what's in Gainesville now that I'm single. And he sent me a message, and we met up, and it was cool, but I was leaving to go to yet another city, Ohio, for the summer. And I was like, I don't expect you to keep in touch with me. I'm going away from the summer. You're new here, kid. Go spread your wild oats. Go have fun, and I'll catch up with you when I get back. But
wow.
I heard from him every single day when I was gone. Every day. We gone on one date, but it really gave us a chance to talk to each other and not just have our, first few months just with let's go do things. You think that having activity is the relationship, but I got to really know who he was as a person. So yeah, I got back and I was still listen, I'm emotionally drained from my last relationship. I don't want anything. And he's like, that's okay, friend, but I'm letting you know, friend to friend, I'm not dating anyone else. So when you're ready for a relationship, we can do this.
He was like, I'm going to be here.
Right, exactly. It's very persistent. But no, it works. We met online, and it worked out ever since.
That's a beautiful, adorable story.
Yeah, I feel like people don't like to tell those stories. I was a mutual friend that hooked us up. Well, you ain't got to lie. If you met online, that's just like meeting somebody random in the grocery store, I think.
Sure, yeah.
You still don't know them. They're both strangers.
Look, I'm not, no shade. I was just surprised that was the connection that you made. I think it's kind of natural for someone who's in computing to be yeah, online dating is
exactly.
great.
I'm on the computer already. Might as well find a boyfriend there too. Do my homework, find a man, book a trip. It's a one-stop shop.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
Because I can't end on the dating story, although it's cute. This is an educational podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so
really that voice?
Hey, I mean, you're the one over there who's always making voices, so I have to be both of us right now.
I do like to make voices.
What accomplishment are you most proud of?
Man, that's really
and why?
Hard.
I'm trying to tell you, these people that I surveyed, they were good.
Whew. Let me really think about that. I would say that getting my PhD is what I'm the most proud of, but it's not the hard. How do I describe it? It's not the last thing. I have the career award, I have other achievements, getting your first grant, all those things. But that was the most mentally tough thing I have ever been through in my life, where I wanted to leave, and my support system was just no, you're not. There were so many points where I wanted to stop, and I was just there were days where I'm I can just go home right now, and none of this will be a thing. But yeah, I learned so much about myself. It strengthened my faith in God. I was able to learn that I can't just rely on myself for these things. This is something that's bigger than me, which was a relaxing thing. All right, God's got this. All right, I'm good. But, it was something where I really learned myself. I learned my capabilities. It was a struggle.
Right there with you, sister.
Yeah.
So, okay. It makes sense.
But I made it out. And I'm still here.
You made it out in spite of the fact that you'd been saying since you were in grade school that you hated school.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? I teach the way I wish I had been taught to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't require people to do what I feel like are random exercises. Like, I like to have fun things that are applicable to everyday life versus write some notes on these chapters because I told you to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like to make assignments that I would want to do.
So where can people find you?
You all can find me on Instagram at Dr. Kylanol, and that's DrKylanol. And my Twitter is Dr. Kyla with an underscore, so Dr_Kyla. And what else do I have? I got Facebook, you know.
A website.
Oh yeah, a website. KylaMcMullen.com, KylaMcMullen.com. You can always find me on the Modern Figures podcast website and our Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff. I think that's all I got.
I think that's more than enough.
Yes, yes it is.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kai Kai.
Thanks for having me. I hope to someday come back and be invited to sit on the other side of the table.
Yeah, probably the next episode because I can't do this much longer.
It's been real. These were fun questions. I like them.
I'm glad that you, what is the word that I want to use? Indulged me. Yes, I'm glad that you indulged me in this conversation because I know I could have asked you pretty much anything.
This is very true.
But I decided to keep it professional.
You can ask me crazy stuff. I'll give you a crazy answer.
No, that's just, we don't need to see that side of you on the podcast.
Are we still recording?
Yes, ma'am.
Woo. That's true. That's saved from my Insta stories.
Yeah, so definitely follow her if you want to see some real Dr. Kyla.
That's true.
Where does Kylanol come from?
So it's like Tylenol. Like my family started calling me that because my AOL screen name was Kyla #1 because there were so many Kylas. So it was like KYLANO1, but the one they were interpreting as an L, so then it became Kylanol, like Tylenol, and then it just became a whole thing.
Were you a headache or?
You know, I actually had a costume where I was Kylanol, and I was actually the solution to all of the problems. I was maximum strength Kylanol, actually.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.